Gumby built the rigs for us per, I think, our sound man, Neil Schaefer, who Gumby and Nick knew. And if quite honestly, Neil brought them in to the organization. I think brought Gumby in initially to build the guitar rigs, and then he was hired on as a tech to go on the road. We normally had at that time, Dave and I were stage left with our walk on and off, and then Jeff Young for the So Far So Good Sweat tour was stage right. We're on the Dio Megadeth Sabotage tour as the kickoff when the So Far So Good Sweat album came out in 1988. There's stuff to take care of. Dave's at the mic and singing and playing, and he couldn't just walk off stage anytime he wanted. It was noticeable in the show. So Gumby definitely had heavy responsibility for sure. And I think Gumby, because he's a player and he liked a lot of the same stuff that we did, a lot of the same stuff that Dave, like Michael Schenker and Jimmy Page. And, he was inside the heart and mind of a guitar player, and I think that's what made him very effective on our crew when he worked for us. We were talking about, heavy metal and hard rock. And he made a couple of great observations. One is he said, he goes, we like the repetition. And it's a thing that us rockers don't like about jazz. We appreciate jazz because of the complexity, especially if you're a musician, we appreciate the complexity of it. But what we like about rock and roll and hard rock and for sure metal is this riffage, and it's repetitive, and it's the thing we like about it. And he made another comment too about how over the years, recording had gotten much better. And then keep in mind, this is the late 80s. So record making had gotten quite good. Everything from, Metallica records, Dokken, Rat, that stuff that was certainly very popular at the time. The Sabotage Hall of the Mountain King record that Paul O'Neill produced sounded amazing. Even UFO, but he made the comment that like the older records, they were just kind of figuring it out, setting up John Bonham drums and the frickin' castle, a couple of mics and all this stuff. They were trying to get some new sound. And I remember he and I dialoguing about that. And he said, he goes, yeah, it's as much as I like the material and the songwriting, those records are harder to listen to than the stuff that was modern at that time. Oh, Joe Satriani was very popular too. Surfing with the Alien had just come out. So that was played on the tour bus stereo a lot. Those are, I have nothing but fond memories with Gumby, man. I mean, I think in a lot of ways because he could hang with us, but was not a druggie and was not a prude. I think he in a lot of ways he sort of defined the lines on the road. If it's like, if you went past Gumby, you were in the ditch, right? So I think Gumby in a lot of ways was as long as you're kind of within the confines of Gumbyism, like he wasn't looking at you like, dude, what are you doing over there? Like, Junior, pull it together. If you were still on the Gumby radar, you were within legal lines of reality. One night we're up late at night in the front lounge of the bus, and we were talking about eating peanut butter before going to sleep and how it just made you have awesome dreams, right? And he had this dream about Earthman, right? Like this guy came up out of the sod and became Earthman. I'll never forget it, because to this day, if I can't sleep, I'll go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before I go to bed. And I always think of Gumby. And that was, 30 some years ago. So there were no hours, there were no rules back in that tour. You know what I mean? I mean, there was hard drugs around, much harder than cocaine. Than marijuana, even harder than cocaine, believe it or not. There were hard drugs around, and that was very common in that touring environment. The people we were on tour with, the environment, the crew, that's what it was. So, again, Gumby was kind of kept it to a low roar, and of course we called everyone in the middle of the night, you got a bottle, got a girl, got a joint, whatever, got a peanut butter sandwich, whatever it is you needed, it's like, and Gumby, Gumby knew the drill, he knew that he was there. He was on the payroll, and he was a good soldier, to that degree. Gumby. Yeah, no, I can almost hear it in my head. That's how Dave called everybody. Junior, Gumby, Nick. That's how it always was. And when you got the call, it was I need you here now. And usually it wasn't anger tinged. It was just let's go. Like it's time to go. And Dave was like that. He was from one thought to the next, sometimes very erratically. But when he wanted to move now. And I remember Carrot Fay, we were sitting in his house up in Laurel Canyon. And so he was the co-producer and engineer of Killing Is My Business. And then one day we're sitting there, probably smoking a joint or whatever we were doing. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, Dave got enthused and said, okay, let's go. I remember Carrot looked at me like, what? Like now? Like what? We were just sitting here relaxing a minute ago, So that was a normal tempo. And, to the degree that, Gumby knew the call of the wild, Gumby, it's like, come here, you've got something I want, or come here, I need help. You know what I mean? And that was just, that's how we rolled, man. The DO tour, or of course, Ronnie was the boss, his organization. And so we were the support act. So we didn't get very many sound checks, typical support act, throw and go, as we call it, right? Throw it up, plug it in, hit the lights, let's go, But when we moved on after that, we did the Megadeth Warlock Sanctuary tour. And that tour, we were the headliner. And we did that. We went to Europe as a headliner. We did that lineup here in the United States. And those are probably more of my memories, probably because we had more time together backstage. We had more time together. I think maybe when we were doing the headlining tour, I think we got 2 buses at that point. I think we had a band bus, and then Gumby and Nick and everybody, they had their crew bus. Because I remember we had 2 semi trucks and 2 buses on that tour. So the production was building. It was growing into something bigger. And I will say this, our crew got paid more than me and Dave did. I think we had a $500 salary, and Gumby and the guys, they may have started at 500, but they were making 750 and more. So I remember, hey, welcome to being the owner of the band, right? Is you get paid last, and every time we made money, we just put it into, let's get another truck with bigger production and more stuff. And, so that's what you do in your early days of your business, So yeah, I just remember there being good times, Nick was funny. He was always a ball buster. He liked to just say wild, crazy things to get a rise out of people. You're the traveling family, man. That's what it is out there. I think the So Far So Good So What tour was the first moment where we had a crew who could also play well enough to basically sound check in place of the band. So if we were out doing a record store appearance or radio station promotion work, we could come in and not have to sound check. And and Gumby and Nick were certainly part of that. And I can't remember if Danny, the other techie, could play, but I just remember they could pretty much check the stuff, and kind of get the deck ready for the band. So, Gumby and I, after the tour, he and I did a lot of playing. There's a moment there where, Jeff Young was now out of the lineup in early 1989. The future of, the second guitar position was open. Gumby and I got along well as friends. We got along well musically. We liked playing together. But Gumby and I, we had a lot of fun. We played well. He learned things right. He learned, he can play properly. He's a not an educated musician from a college school level, but he's educated in that he's a student of the guitar. He spent his time on stages and just doing the work as a professional. So we definitely had a lot of fun playing together. Gumby's a fantastic player. In fact, I just played on a track for him, which I really enjoyed. He even said, he goes, "Hey man, it's UFO meets Montrose." And I listened to it, I go, "It totally is." And which I love, 2 of my favorites, and I think that's kind of a kinship we have, is that we kind of have like-minded influences. And it's fun to be able to just throw a name out there. It kind of sounds like Montrose. It's like, oh man, I'm in, and that, there are certain people you have that sort of rapport with. And, there's buzzwords that sort of musically connect you. Gumby and I definitely have that. The bands I remember Gumby listening to were certainly Jimmy Page, Michael Schenker probably being his favorite. And I think in a lot of ways that was kind of a kinship between him and Dave. Gumby could talk guitar language with Dave. But I think, Gumby was, he liked the English and European style guitar player. And I think that, had a nice kinship to Dave and to me, and I think to the Megadeth organization. And I do remember something about Dave's comment, kind of like, God, it would have to be Gumby, because we liked Gumby. And the fact that Nick and Gumby had played together didn't guarantee either one of them the position. I think at that point, Nick had already had the position. But sometimes you don't just come as a team. Well, look, I'll give you a perfect example. We called Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. We were looking specifically at him. And he said, well, thank you I love Megadeth. Thank you for the call. But with me comes my brother. And we said, well, we already have a drummer. We have Chuck Wheeler in the band at this point. This is pre-Nick. This is early 1989. So we didn't get Dime because we didn't need a drummer. And of course, Vinny's fantastic. So, it isn't just Gumby and Nick that it happened to. It happened to Dime and Vinny, right? Who then went on, of course, to pretty much change the world with their work in Pantera. I think in this particular case, Gumby came up through the ranks with a different understanding, from a tech side to being a sort of at times personal handler for Dave. And I know that wasn't probably his desire. I certainly, again, I love Gumby as a friend. I certainly respect and admire him as a musician. But, I think, look, Dave is the boss. I mean, clearly said. And so again, if you don't like those rules or the way his sort of culture is of him being the boss, then it may not be the right gig for you. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, you walk into a lot of jobs and go, God, I love this place. I love your product. Too bad the boss is, an asshole, or I don't like the boss, or God, I wish he wasn't fucking so snarky or whatever. It's like, well, that's who he is. So, people ask me how I lasted for, almost 40 years. And it's like, well, I knew who he was when I met him. And I knew that right, wrong, or indifferent, he's going to be running the show. He's calling the shots. He's of an alpha nature that he's not going to back down. And there were collaborative moments, of course, and there were brotherly moments. But, I knew pretty quick, it's like, it's his way or there's the door. And you have to be able to get on board with that in that particular band. Not every band is like that. And if you try to rub against that and change that, for sure, there's the door. To me, Gumby's strengths as a musician, first of all, he's a solid rhythm player. He's got incredible lead guitar tone. He's got good fingers and good touch, and that's something that either you have or you don't. And in fact, I've seen people that don't have it work very hard at it. And it just never sounds as natural as people that just touch the guitar right, And I remember watching Gumby play, like just watching how he fingered things. They were always in tune. They were firm, but never out of tune. And just as important, the right hand for picking, when he picked, he just had a nice style about that. And so lots of times it's a touch, it's a feel thing. So, I think musically Gumby, he had a good ear. He could hear things. He could process it. He could kind of, understand things. He could speak the language of not just a guitar player, but also that of a musician. And he could speak it in rock and roll terms that worked well in a band room or on a stage. Here's a defining moment, really, if I think my friendship with Gumby is, I went to rehab coming right up the So Far So Good So What tour. We're supposed to do, I think, 5 shows across Europe. I went back into a rehab. for 2 weeks. I left. Actually, I think me and Dave both went in, and then we left. And Gumby came to my house, and he said, "Hey, man," he goes, "Dude, like getting help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And you're doing what millions of us musicians would love to be doing. You got it in the palm of your hands, and you're just pissing it away. Now get in the car. We're going back to rehab." And he drove me back to rehab because he cared about me. He was my friend, and he cared about me. Not from a job, not from, hey, and that's a pretty ballsy thing, because when you step in front of addiction like that, you're easily the first one to be shot in the head and thrown out the door, right? Because, hey, don't tell me what to do. I'm your boss. Screw you. So that was very ballsy and very bold of him to do that, and to do it because he knew ultimately my life was on the line. So I will never, ever forget that from Gumby. And for that, he is one of a small handful of people who really, were not my enablers. They just said, "Hey, you need to do the right thing," and he got in front of it. So that while I was even in rehab, when I was introducing him as my friend, and I said, "Hey, he's the guitar tech, and he might even become the next guitar player at Megadeth." That position was unknown. Maybe I even said he was the next guitar player at Megadeth. But I certainly gave him the nod that, hey, he's on the inside here. He's not just some lackey. He's one of the inner circle, and the way it landed with the time Gumby was with the organization and the amazing things he did, mostly behind the scenes, not things that would get, outward public acclaim. I know I go to bed at night, and I hope Gumby can too, knowing that, he did a lot of good for a lot of people. And had he not done that, things would have gone very differently and probably not very well. Gumby to me is just, he's definitely a man of character. He's unwavering. He's the same guy today that he was then. He's punchy, he's ballsy, he's outspoken. Yet he's clear, and he's very articulate in what he says. And I think he speaks with authority. When he speaks, he means it. He says what he means. He does what he says. And, to me, that's a man of character. And I consider Gumby a tremendous friend as a result of that. I think the fact that he came over to my house and, called me out and stood in front of my addiction and said, "Hey, get in my car. We're going back to rehab." Nothing more needs to be said. Someone who's willing to walk in front of those bullets and take the heat. To me, that's helping save a man's life.
I met Gumby in Sacramento, California, summer of 1979, and I got a job at a place called Bob Frink Chevrolet. Guy got hired in there, and a funny story about that. It was eventually the drummer in the band, Mark McCutcheon, and so we started, chatting and kind of became friends. And Mark invited me over to their band practice, and it was the band Emerald, and it was Gumby, Darwin, and Mark, and they practiced in Rancho Cordova. And so I came over, and that's how I met John. And I had an El Camino, so I had a pickup bed, so I could haul gear around. So I became a roadie, and that's literally how I learned to do what I do today. And I've made a living for over 40 years by meeting Mark at Bob Frink Chevrolet, going to Gumby's house to watch them practice, and we just became friends. After that, we got an apartment together. We moved to LA together. We lived in several different places together. We were pretty inseparable for years, Gumby and I. We were young. We were 18 years old. We were just having fun. And we didn't get into any trouble. It was just all about music. It was all about playing music and all these bands that started happening. So we just absorbed music. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life was meeting Gumby. I'll say that right now. It changed the trajectory. I went from Olympic swimming jock to full on rock dude. And it was just like it was like meeting John kind of just opened up. everything. You know, when I first met John and saw him play at such a young age, I seriously was blown away that somebody that young, without any of the life experiences or doing shit tons of gigs, what I've learned now, even now I learned, but back then I used to tell him all the time, dude, you're by far my favorite guitar player. I can listen to you play. Like, he had such a grasp on rock. He just had a grasp on it. He just got it. And then he had his Flying V, you know, which was cool as shit. So I just think he comes up with licks and hooks, and he just has such a grasp on music. Like, he just absorbs it. Like, I don't even know. I think that's, some people have it. Like, some people are like gifted basketball players or soccer players. He was just a gifted guitar player. You know, I mean, I'd seen a few concerts in my life, but I think to literally see somebody play guitar like that in person, I thought it was awesome. John was easy to work with in the sense that he kind of knew what he wanted. Like, he's one of these guys that I think he would hear the song like already done. You know, I think like anybody else of his caliber, I think there was times when we butted heads because, you know, he wanted it his way a lot of times. And rightfully so. I mean, you don't understand that at the time when you're a young kid, you're 19 or 20 or 21, you don't realize that. But as you get older, you kind of respect and realize, man, the dude has a vision. And I'll tell you what I learned from that. As a recording engineer and producer, I've learned more to listen to the artist and not inflict my will upon them, because it's their song. They're the artist. You can try to guide them, but Gumby had visions and knew what he wanted. We always shared a home together. Peg, John's girlfriend at the time, and myself and Darwin pretty much went everywhere that we moved. We kind of moved together. And John and Peg and I were pretty inseparable for a while there. And Darwin was right with us. We had some wonderful experiences. I remember rushing home up to Kegel Canyon, way up in the mountain, to watch The Wizard of Oz, because you didn't have DVDs or anything back then. So that was always our big thing, was we'd eat acid and watch The Wizard of Oz. And it was kind of like a yearly ritual. And it only showed like one time a year. Like, you know what I mean? I'll tell you, another fun thing that we used to do, we used to all go into the canyon, but we used to go hiking. We would go and we would just get some water, and we'd grab Sun, John and Peg's dog, and all of us, we would just go and spend the day hiking. Like, just going from one end of the canyon to the next, spend all day. We consider that to be fun. One of the fun things, obviously, that we did was the first time we packed up in a couple of cars and went out and did some shows with Foghat. That was pretty interesting, and that was our first foray into hitting the road. And I had a little Datsun little mini pickup truck, and we packed it full, and Nick had a little spot in the back under the cab where he wanted to sleep, and so we just, all those experiences were fun. The shows were interesting. The after shows, sharing hotel room. Even beyond that, like going on tour with Megadeth with John and Nick and I, we were, I'm telling you, for years, we were pretty inseparable. And the journey was pretty amazing. And on a whole flip side, one of John's coworkers' roommate worked for Paul Anka, and they were looking for a backline tech. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to the Hollywood Bowl, and Paul was playing that night. I met with the production manager. And I got hired on the spot. Said, go home and get your shit. You're leaving tonight. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was like punched my ticket to go from tour to tour to tour to tour, and to really never stop until I gave up touring just to be a studio guy. Had I not been a backline tech, I would have never worked my way into audio, which is what I really wanted. And none of that would have happened had I not met Gumby. It's just funny how life works. One thing you have to realize, Gumby has a memory. I don't know how he does this, but he can remember dates and times of shit happening. And I'm like, I don't even know how you, who consume so much cannabis, can remember this shit. But he remembers everything. Dude, I'm telling you, you ask him about it, he'll tell you the date of the country club. He'll tell you what time we went on. He'll tell you who was in the room, who was left, what we were wearing. And he's got pictures to prove all of it. Gumby's a guy that really is extremely compassionate. He is an animal lover, which makes him a special human. People that really love animals, especially dogs, they're a different type of person. So Gumby's very compassionate. He's very giving, but if he doesn't like something, or he doesn't like you, or he doesn't like what you're doing, he's exactly like me. He'll fucking tell you to your face. And he doesn't give a shit what you think. He doesn't care whether you like him or you don't like him. He has his convictions, and he's going to let you know. So you don't have to worry about what he's thinking. He'll tell you. And for that, I respect him probably more than anybody that I know. John is one of my longest friends that I've known. He's just an awesome person. He's a good human.
John was really good. He's really focused. He was really good as a band leader. That's the reason why he pissed everybody off. You know, when you're good at something, you do nothing for free. Okay, you don't give it away. You know, John was really focused, and he had a vision, and he created. I mean, the fucker actually created his vision. You know, he saw it to fruition, and he was militant on it. He was good, and you need that. And, you know, and he even said, he goes, I'm not making any friends here. I'm making a band. I'm making a career, you know, until you look back on it and say, you know what? All right, I'll give the guy everything, because he was really good at it. And he is really incredibly advanced in his guitar playing and songwriting skills. You know, John was real, dude. You know, he was kind of inspirational. I look back on it now and I'm thinking, you know what, I wouldn't have done it that way, but he was right. He had the right vision. He was just like, he kept everybody kind of indirectly focused on everything. And, you know, and he was fun, you know, he like on the road, you know, back with Megadeth and stuff. Oh, he was, you know, he was complete heads up baseball. I mean, he put his head fucking straight on the thing. But, you know, when it was the Rhodes or Emerald or Soma or whatever band that we were in at the time, he kept that loosely tight, you know, like really loosely tight. He, you show up to play the game, you know your parts, you know the play we're calling, get it done. But by the way, fellas, you know, and this was Gumby's thing. It's like, don't forget to have fun, because at the end of the fucking day, this is what it is, you know, and we all of us, I mean, everybody, you know, we learned from John. We really did, you know, whether I don't like to admit it or not, but he taught us all. I mean, he's like our he's like our senior guy, you know. We don't want to take advice from him, but like at the end of the day, all right, John, we're cool, you know. And those are some good times because we had a guy that worked for us in our band, Neil Schaefer, who was straight out, I think, in my personal opinion, and I've seen everybody in the business at that time, was the best in the fucking business. And so he got us all kind of like sideline gigs for Megadeth, and we were rehearsing at Mates, and everybody got the call except me. You know, like everyone's going on. I was like, fuck. I didn't get the call. Well, 2 weeks later, I get the call. And I went to the Compton Terrace in Arizona. And Gumby actually picked me up from the airport. Nick, my best friend, Gumby, you know, the three of us, it was like a trifecta. We all ended up just like having the best time. Well, so John took more of kind of a leadership role because I think he was doing Dave's guitars at that time, and not Jeff's. And he walked me through it. I mean, he said, "This is the gig. This is what we're doing. You know, this is what you do, and more importantly, this is not what you do. You stay in your own fucking lane. This is how it works." So he taught me a lot. He was the tribal elder in that. And he gave Nick and I a quick schooling on the road, Megadeth, you know, roadie 101, you know, don't go there. Don't do this. You will be invited into the fold when you're invited into the fold. You know, of course, Nick and I fucked everything up, and John didn't, you know, but, you know, he was a really good friend. He can do all the fusion shit. He can write all this, like, you know, this really bitchin' Queensryche dream theater all day long. But when it comes right back down to it, he's a rock guy. He's a Schenker Page guy because he plays really clean, precise notes, and that's his roots. And he does it better than most people, you know. And he really does. And you know, hey Gumby, throw some. You know, Satriani, yeah, he can do all the, you know, the shit, or some like Santana, but he's really blues rock orientated. And I think that what he does the best, his thing is really geared around Schenker. And to all of us, ask anybody, that's our guy. That's the guy. And he pulls it off. He pulls it off better than anyone, you know. And he's like Nick. He always seemed to play better soulfully, feel wise, when he had a big crowd and when it absolutely, positively had to be delivered in the big show, in the big arena. That I'm super impressed with. And plus his studio work. I mean, he can pick up on anything in any key. So. And he's like, okay, let's do it again. He would do it again. Like, and he'd nail it. He'd do it again, and he would nail it. It's like, okay, which part of the nail that you want to hit this time? You know, it was like Nick, you know. I mean, I think Nick did cryptic writings in 7 fucking days, you know, the entire fucking record, you know, and he was the same way. They went in there, they fucking bounced, they powdered the fucking thing, and then they fucking ejected, you know. And dude, he was like, he knew his shit. He went in there and he didn't fuck around. I don't know where he got that. Just from focus and being Gumby. I mean, you know. Ronnie Montrose, dude, Pat Travers, Van Halen, even, you know, I mean, we all are influenced by fucking Eddie. But he was like, even George Harrison, he thought that guy was the fucking shit. And we, you know, we still do. We still talk about, you know, some of the arrangements in the shit. But I mean, Gary Moore was all the Thin Lizzy stuff, you know. In fact, he's the one who turned us all on to all of that. And we're like going, wait, you know, on vinyl where the fucking records were like going, we're like, you know, we're going like, that fucking song rule, turn it up. And, you know, Nick had a fucking room in the attic in his parents' house on the, we call it the pilot house. And we'd crank this stuff. And his dad would like, okay, I heard that 5 times. I can play the record now. Sunshine, and she was like an Irish setter or a golden retriever, and she went to work, she went to the beach, she did everything, she went into restaurants. I mean, it was like, you know, it was like the third person. So when she went down into the studio, it wasn't uncommon, you know, and the rest is fucking history, you know. So like, you know. And I moved to Hawaii. When I heard of her passing, I you know, we all had a big sigh. But you know, she was wicked awesome, and she was a part of the band. I mean, she was a part of she was part of our fucking crew, all of us. I mean, you know, dude, where's Son? You know, oh, right here. Come on, get up. You know, that was just what it was. It was never an option. I mean, you know. I'll tell you a funny story. Gumby, you know, is not a very big drinker, as well, maybe I'm more than he is, but we had opened up a bottle of scotch. 1, 2, 3 by the pool, then 2, 4, 6. We ended up getting really fucking hammered. And then Gumby goes, dude, I forgot. Hold on. And he splits. I'm like, what the fuck? He comes back with this little electric guitar, and he's like blazing, goes, you know, and we're like, everybody's by the pool kind of going, yeah, dude, play a Zeppelin song. He goes, which one do you want to play? Click, click, click. He's playing Rain Song, and he's doing like Celebration Day Live. And I'm like, where did you pop that guitar out? How do you have that? That's a Gumby story. You know, I can go back and forth, and I can tell you all sorts of shit about when we were young. But at the end of the day, you look at everything and say, you know, my life, our life, Nick's life, all of us are better because of John. He kept us in our lane. And he showed us music. He showed us the right discipline, the protocols, the etiquettes. And he turned us on to music that we would never even be listening to. So he shaped us all. I mean, he really made us better musicians, and he really made us, he was like the teacher that nobody liked, but you liked because you liked him when he wasn't in class. He taught us all, man. He taught us all, you know, and he had a quirky sense of humor, but I think what he's going to remembered for is that, and he's an incredible composer, and he's an incredible guy with incredible talent that just was never seen by the right people, and he's just the right guitar player for most parts, and he's my friend. And if I'm going to speak for Nick from heaven right now, hand to God, you know, and Nick will say he was his biggest influence in his life. And I see that because I was one of Nick's best friends, as you all know. And he changed us all, man. You know, he really changed us all. And I think he is the best musician, the best non-signed worldwide musician in history, because he can play everything and he can compose anything. I will tell you something about John Gumby Goodwin. He will never lie to you. He is more than a friend. He's a part of my life. He's a part of my existence. And I don't know what I would do without having John in my life, because we, you know, after all those lives that we've had, and I say lives plural, you know, nobody can understand what you went through unless you were there. Well, he was, we were, we did all that together. So when we say, dude, remember that place in that time with that guy when that fucking oh God. I hope that we still have as much time left as we had in the past, because he is definitely, John Gumby Goodwin is my friend. And I just can't wait for the next 20 years.
John had a combination of business ethic and a sense of humor. And not everybody does, a sense of irony, but he had a good business ethic. You know, when you hire somebody at a music store who's a really great guitar player, as John is and John was, you often don't get a good businessman. But he was a good businessman, but he saw the humor in the whole thing. I mean, he could take a situation that was very intense and lighten it up, and realize that nothing's that important. Let's all relax. He was good at that. He was good with customers. People liked him. And he knew what he was doing, especially when it came to guitars and effects. And we had him in management. He was doing management things. So, yeah, John was a good mix of business and life. John's a great guitar player, but he is one of the best, most melodic soloists I've ever met. If you're into, he can play all sorts of things, and he can just shred heavy metal, and he's great at that. But also, I mean, but there's a lot of people that are doing lots of notes, and you're not sure. He's great at that. But what he's really great at is melodic solos, melodic melody lines. So when he's doing a solo, he's very aware of the chords, the musical content, the harmonies, and so he can, even when he's playing fast, he's saying something. It's a memorable, and he's making musical line. And of course, when you think about in my mind, great guitar players that are really good at melodic stuff, you think of Carlos Santana, for instance, or Moore. He's great at playing rhythm guitar and chords. He's great at shredding, and he's great at doing rock and roll and metal solos. But what a lot of people aren't great at that John also is, that to me is his most important. Those melody lines, whether it's a solo or whether he's backing somebody else, he's always good at playing things that you remember and things that are musical and things that are beautiful, which is not common among the great, metal shredders, but it is with John. And I put him up there with all the greats who know how to make a melody line that'll make you cry or laugh or feel. He spent a lot of nights rehearsing after hours in the basement. And of course, with Nick was involved in almost all those projects, as was Darwin. But yeah, it was great. They spent a lot of time rehearsing in the basement. They were serious about the music. They spent their time getting better on the music. A lot of bands used to rehearse a lot in those periods of time, but that was more of a party, and then they'd play through the set with mistakes. John's bands were always about making great music, and it was. And they worked hard, and they worked long. His strengths as a band leader were the same thing as his strengths as a person, as a human being, and as a manager at a music store. He's a people person, so he knows, how to get people to calm down and get along and think, what's the big goal? The goal is the music. The goal is getting something that sounds good and feels good, and let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's take the music seriously. I remember pulling up into the parking lot of the main store in North Hollywood where John was, and hear him saying on the PA system, "Owner alert, owner alert, owner alert," so everybody could stop playing around, and I could pretend I didn't know how many people were goofing off and look very serious. And it just in time for me to come in. At some point, he must know that I knew it, because it was as much a joke. It was an inside joke. I mean, I knew it, but at the beginning, I don't know he knew that I knew it. So other stores, I don't even need to mention names, famous chains were very high pressure, like a used car lot, Hey, would you buy this today if I got it to you for this much? How much are you willing to offer? We didn't do that, and John certainly didn't do that. But one of the funniest things I ever heard him say, he was showing somebody a guitar, was, "Let's pop this baby in the case and see how it looks." And I thought that was, and those nice velvet cases were very nice for guitars. But he had stuff like that, because he really, as I said before, did get the balance between business and humor and life and seriousness. When we did have a lot of great players and famous customers come in, John was good about keeping to business. He was never about, "Oh, wow, your show was great Saturday." Or he was always about, "Let me solve your problem. What kind of a guitar do you want? Or what do you need fixed? Or why are your tone controls need adjusting?" So he was good at that. The funny stories, we had a extra room. This was a huge store. It had been a huge department store and had been around since the late 40s, early 50s. And it had a basement and had all sorts of different rooms that had been different things. The department store was made by a row of different retail stores on Lancashire Boulevard that had been combined to make a big department store. So there were several different sections of departments, including a hidden part of the store that was, we weren't allowed really to go in because it was falling apart, and there was a fear that the ceilings would collapse. And so it became the secret hiding place for many of the employees who were there all the time doing things I wasn't supposed to know about. And there was a lot of stuff that went on in there. But again, John was good at being a kid with the other kids, but then being an adult when it was time to go back to business. By the way, it was kind of the same thing, I think I said before, as the band room was in high school. It was a refuge away from the real life part of the school, just musicians hanging out. And that, I think, was different about the whole store. And how John fit in is there were people who were musicians and they were dedicated to their music careers and they worked in a music store to make a living, versus other stores that demanded that you not have a band and not play music and not to work in their store. They wanted full-time professional salesmen. We wanted full-time professional humans. And if we're talking about John, it shows he had heart. He has heart. It shows in his playing, and it showed in the way he conducted business. When I was selling pianos and others in that will get very serious, I'll be talking to at the desk with my back against the wall. In front of me would be two customers. We're talking about them buying a piano or possibly synthesizer. And then there would be different employees who are all still friends who would think it would be funny to stand behind the customers and pull down their pants just to see if they could crack me up, which I think I did a pretty good job of not. John's dog, Sunshine, Sunny Sun, was the coolest dog in the world, smartest dog in the world. Clearly, even to people who would not think of the subject, clearly a recent human being in a previous carnation. And occasionally the dog would be there. The dog fit in. The dog was amazingly smart, amazingly lovable, had great energy. And if the dog really liked you, sometimes she would come up and just lean against your leg. She was a leaner sometimes. She was a red, like partly Irish setter, something like that. Just a wonderful dog. And I would, if somebody had said to me, theoretically, would you let one of the employees bring a dog to the store? I would have said no. But this dog wasn't a dog. This was the coolest, smartest, greatest dog. A good music lover, like John's playing, probably offered notes behind our backs at some point to John. But a great person, a great human being, a great guitar player.
I met Gumby, I want to say around 82, 83 at Goodman Music. I walked in asking about guitar lessons, and Gumby was working there, and he said, yeah, we've got a teacher. We've got a teacher here. And then he signed me up for a Saturday with, I can't remember the teacher's name, but I took one lesson there. But I was hanging around after and just checking out all the gear and stuff there at Goodman Music, showing me around all the different gear and you know, demoing stuff and whatnot. So yeah, met him, and then I went in for my guitar lesson, and then I saw him again. He goes, "Hey man, my band is playing tonight at the Troubadour," and so I ended up getting 3 tickets from him to go see the Rhodes Band. And it was cool, man. You know, we got to see a pretty good show, you know. The Rhodes Band was really good. Kind of tripped out on all of them wearing green drum set, green everything. You know, that's when we met, but we would meet in different circumstances later in life, you know, where we actually, you know, created some kind of bond. Later on, I met Darwin and Gumby. Formerly, we met at Silver Cloud recording studios in Burbank, Joe Floyd and Sean Kennesy's studio. Basically, Warrior headquarters, if you know what I mean. And those guys were always in and out there. Gumby was there probably every day, bringing videos over on aliens and stuff. And Nick invited us over to his house, you know, which was, he was living with his folks at the time. And we ended up spending the whole afternoon with him, listening to the Metallica show that he had just recorded. And he was selling copies for $5. And he had found the sweet spot to record the band, and you know, and he would put them on a chrome tape, like the real expensive cassettes, and it was worth the $5, to be honest. I ended up getting 2 from him, one for me and one for my buddy. So yeah, you know, we were all really into going to shows back then. Everybody, that's, you know, it wasn't like internet days, you know. You actually went to shows and you know, got to hang out. I mean, obviously Gumby was well-rounded player, and you know, he was hip to all the stuff. You know, he grew up in the era of Randy Rhoads and Van Halen and Lynch in the early days, you know, where I wasn't old enough to go to the Starwood and all that. I would listen to him, you know, when we would all be talking, hanging out at Joe Floyd's. And yeah, as far as playing, you know, we were all into the same kind of stuff, you know, that Thin Lizzy kind of vibe. We did a jam at Lucky Strike, and Gumby came out in a Gumby suit. And I was just blown away going, what? And he came out in a full-blown Gumby suit, like the one that Eddie Murphy wore, like kind of like that vibe. I thought that was pretty outrageous, to be honest. You know, I could just say that Gumby is a constant hard worker. He's been a part of a lot of cool things. The Kelly Road situation, and always, you know, being in that camp, the Rhodes family camp, and his work with those guys, you know, with Darwin, Nick, and for sure, you know, all the things that he's done after. I just want to say, brother,
Goodman Music was like a real hub for us musicians in the day, a place to hang and stuff like that. And Joe Goodman is a totally, you know, really cool guy that supported all our crazy dreams. And John was always just a great guy and liked to talk, you know, shop. And so we just connected. And you know, they would jam there after hours and stuff. And he had all the cool gear. He had all the pedals and the rack gear and Marshall amps, and you know, so it was a good place for gear. I was living in Van Nuys at the time in the early '80s, and so Goodman's was just the place, you know, where to go and plug in and hear the latest stuff. So, and John super helpful, and you know, young guy and playing and you know guitar, and so we connected, you know, and just became friends. You know, John brought in a few different projects, and he's always super creative. John didn't, you know, try to, you know, follow trends or anything. That he was just into doing his own thing and really into kind of exploring and being outrageous. So um, it was always a fun experience to work with John, a creative, you know, that kind of creative energy that uh, comes when you're just not thinking about, okay, we're trying to sound like this band or that band or, you know, whatever. And you're just letting it flow naturally. And so I've always liked that about John. You know, he's his own total creative person and does it his way. And I mean, he's got a really amazing technical ability. You know, he can play all the crazy licks, and you know, you just watch him play, and it's mind blowing because he's so skilled. And we jammed at Nick's memorial, and you know, I hadn't seen John play in a while, and he had a pedal board, and he just had such command of all these sounds that he had programmed in there, and he could just pull them up, and I was like really blown away by, you know, how far he had even progressed since I had heard him play before. You know, Nick was a super creative person too, and you know, beyond being obviously an amazing drummer, Von Skeletor was kind of a concept type of project that, I mean, you listen to the music and yeah, you can just tell lyrically, the whole vibe of it is got a cohesiveness to it. John had songs. Those guys had songs, you know, pretty worked out, as I recall. Arrangement adjustments, new ideas would pop up and get recorded on the spot. That's all part of the process, but it was all just a great life, you know, hanging with friends, making music. There was great energy just in general. of musicians in town in that, you know, in that time period. You know, the Hollywood scene was thriving. I know he's into the color green, and that is a lot of, you know, Gumby's trademark. Or he was always Gumby. He will definitely be remembered by that name because he is Gumby. He came out at Nick's memorial in a Gumby suit, so, and played a song. So it was one of the memorable moments.
From Birmingham, you see. But up there, you got to have a trade before you start any fucking kind of job. You know? I've been working there in this factory with all my fucking and snake oil and now my elbows. It's a terrible thing, you know. But I have to go through it. So, here I am. Okay, thanks for coming.
Change my name to trouble. I wanna hit the streets and change my way of life. The moon is full and I am howling. My baby's teeth are always shining. feels so good to be back. You don't like it when you're going cold turkey. You're looking good in your mama's New Jersey. You lick me good like an open French letter. I took away the pain and made me feel better. I'm grown. That devil that drugs in me. And it feels so good to be back. My roller coaster's costing too much money. The tracks are broken and it ain't so funny. I think it's time I jump the crazy train. I hope I'll never climb aboard again. Stop running, stop hiding. Don't live inside yourself. Make your tired, so wired. Remember death and don't feel bad. It feels so good to be back. It feels so good to be back. It feels so good to be back. It feels so good to be back.